I want to now segue into the next section, which we have Eric Johnson from the Journal of Commerce discussing what global and domestic logistics technology ecosystems can learn from one another. Eric Johnson is the Journal of Commerce's senior editor of technology, where he leads coverage and analysis of technology's impact on global logistics and trade. Um, Eric regularly reports on how shippers, carriers across all modes and logistics companies use software as well as new concepts impacting core freight transportation processes like procurement, execution, visibility, and payment. Prior to joining Journal of Commerce in May 2018, Johnson spent 13 years with American Shippers. I really personally enjoy reading a lot of the articles he puts out, so we're excited to have you, Eric. Go ahead and take it from here.
Great. Thanks so much, Matt and Mustafa and the whole Zoom team for involving me in this. It's been really great to sit in and listen to the content so far. So I just have a little brief time to sort of explore something with you that I think a lot about. If you don't know me, as Matt said, I'm a technology reporter at the Journal of Commerce. So I have kind of the good fortune to sit atop an industry in such a way that I get to see advancements in technology on both the domestic and international logistics side of things. And what I see is that those markets tend to be pretty bifurcated around domestic and international solutions. So to me, that's somewhat natural. And it's kind of a function of the way that departments have traditionally been set up and to a large extent still are set up today. You have international transportation teams, you have domestic transportation teams, you have an inbound logistics focus, an outbound logistics focus. Things tend to be, delineated in that way. And so the solutions have kind of grown up to address problems in that way. And one thing I hear a lot about is, okay, well, the market wants single solutions across all modes. It indicates that, it wants tech to bridge that gap. But the reality is that the majority of systems are still sort of better at one thing than the other, or at least there's a perception in the market that that's the case. And then when we put that in the perspective of the last decade, which we've heard a lot about today already in terms of how much venture capital has flown into the space, sort of the ironic thing is that innovation that's driving that VC interest has developed in a very parallel way to those systems that divide international and domestic. There are domestic solutions and international solutions still. And that's being, even with all the innovation and the venture capital that's come, that's the way it is. So why is this? Well, there are a lot of reasons, and I don't have time to go into all of them. So I'm just going to focus on one that I think is really instructive to look at. And that is sort of the geographic location of what I'll call log tech innovation. So globally, when I sort of look at the way innovation is percolating up from the grassroots level, you tend to see startups emerge in clusters that are centered around major ports, major freight ports especially. So LA, Singapore, Rotterdam, Antwerp, Hamburg, Marseille. I'm not going to give an exhaustive list, but there's all these sort of tech ecosystems that are built around the problems that tend to happen in a major port gateway. And then, there's also the historical kind of shipping centers like London and Hong Kong, where there's just a real nexus of shipping and logistics expertise. Again, same kind of thing. You have these ecosystems of innovation around those two cities as well. In the US, that innovation has been way more dispersed. So obviously there's a lot that's generated in the Bay Area, in Seattle, Boston, New York, naturally. These are the areas where innovation as a whole kind of thrives. But there's also a ton in Chicago. There's a ton in Atlanta, a ton in Texas, a lot in Florida. Areas of heavy freight concentration. And it goes well beyond that. We've seen lots of diaspora of kind of tech innovators throughout the country, especially over the last year. Why is this? Well, there's a lot better capital, as we've heard today. There's a lot more access to capital in North America than anywhere else in the world. That is absolutely clear. COVID has also meant that startups are freer to be based outside of those traditional kind of power ecosystems that are based around capital. And that's good, right? It means there's economic activity and growth in more regions. So absolutely, yes, it's good. But the clusters that are focused on international freight solutions also have an advantage. They get access to a lot of talent, a lot of domain expertise in the area of logistics. They also, importantly, have more direct access to the ecosystem into which they are trying to sell. So a startup, for instance, that's near a port that is, say, focusing on automating customs docks or expediting container flow in and out of a container terminal, they likely have a lot more opportunity to tap directly into that landscape of potential users of its software than if you were located in a remote location and you kind of had to explain yourself why you were not near that, physical location. A trucking software provider in the Bay Area, while it can be successful, it doesn't necessarily have that same inbuilt ecosystem in which to tap into. So interestingly, I mentioned that diaspora of kind of founders throughout the US. You can kind of consider some of the software providers to emerge in those off the grid locations to have sort of a similar advantage as these global innovation centers, because a lot of times they're founded around an area where there's a couple trucking companies or a big kind of cluster of freight brokerages tend to be. So same kind of phenomenon they're trying to tap into. So I guess what I'm trying to say big picture is location means a lot in real estate, and it certainly means a lot when it comes to innovation in our space. Where you're based might seem to mean less and less in a COVID world, but I think that's a little bit of a mirage. Access to talent and domain expertise and to potential users of a system really do matter. And sometimes that means more than close proximity to the capital.